Сайн байцгаана уу хүнд үзэгчдээ. Өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор олон улсын эрчим хүчний IRENA гэж байгууллагын захирал ноён Гурбуз Гонул оролцож байна.
Гурбуз Гонул олон улсын сэргээгдэх эрчим хүчний агентлагийн хамтын ажиллагааны хэлтсийн дарга. Гурбуз Гонул нь Анкара дахь ойролт орондын технологи их сургуулийг газрын тос хийн инженер мэргэжлэр төгссөн. Тэрээр Туркийн эрчим хүчний яам, Европын холбооны Анкара дахь офис, Аз, Африкт зээл болон техник хамтын ажиллагааг удирдан ажиллаж байсан ба Исламын хөгжлийн банкад эрчим хүчний ахлах эдийн засагчаар ажиллаж байсан. Гурбуз Гонул олон улсын сэргээгдэх эрчим хүчний агентлагт 2014 оноос бүс нутаг хариуцсан хэлтсийн даргаар ажиллаж байгаа.
Good evening. Please tell us about IRENA.
Thank you very much. IRENA, International Renewable Energy Agency, it was established in 2011, so it's relatively a new organization. It's an intergovernmental organization. And since the establishment of IRENA, its constituency has grown exponentially. We have started around with 60-70 members, but today the membership stands at 160 countries. On top of that, we have around 23 countries in the process of membership. So we are very close to universality.
So fast.
So fast.
Since 2011.
Yeah, exactly. This shows a lot the important role that the governments attach to renewable energy development. In fact, there is one and only important task that was mandated by the governments to IRENA. It's to promote widespread deployment of renewable energy technologies in a sustainable manner. So that's how we operate. We produce knowledge on various renewable energy issues, from policy to technology to finance to innovation. But we also help countries on the ground, supporting them to move forward with their renewable energy strategies, in the development of the strategies and the implementation of the strategies. We provide technical assistance, capacity building support, etc., through various technical assistance projects at the country level and at the regional level.
So 160 countries and even another more than 20 comes. Very important, in particular at this time when we need safe energy, use more renewable energy. I mean, these countries are paying membership fee. How often you meet? A bit about the organizations.
Sure. There are a number of governing bodies of IRENA. One is General Assembly, which takes place every January. So it's a big event attended by more than 1,000 participants, take place at our headquarters in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. And last one took place 2 months ago, and it was attended by more than 120 ministers across the globe. It was it took place over 3 days of different events, ministerial roundtables, etc. So it's a lot on the substantive side rather than an administrative event, I would say. We have also the council, which convenes twice a year, which is informing the assembly at the beginning of the year. Other than that, IRENA organizes various events, conferences across the globe at the regional level or country level. And this provides opportunity also for engagement of the agency with the regions and the countries, and to receive feedback on the priorities and specific issues relevant to that country and region, so that we can tailor our approaches.
You said it is headquartered in Abu Dhabi, and the organization is funded by which source? Is membership fee or?
There is of course, I mean, our core budget is financed by our members, depending on their GDP levels. But a large source of funding is also coming from voluntary contributions provided by our members.
Okay. And yet, this is only, 8 years organization, so many dynamics and happening. And let's talk about Northeast Asia. How is that dynamics going on?
Yes. In fact, I mean, before moving to Northeast Asia, let me give a snapshot of what's going on globally on renewable energy.
Please.
Because renewable energy has, in the last 10 years, in the last decade, moved into the center of the global energy landscape. Of course, there are reasons for that. There is a technology innovation, there is improved efficiencies, but there is also drastically declined cost of renewable energy technologies, particularly solar and wind. When we look at what happened in the last, since 2010, the cost of generating power from solar PV has declined around 73%, and the same for around 23% for wind. So it's a kind of a very significant decline in the cost, which made this business case for renewables much stronger, especially for solar and wind.
Since 2010, you said.
Correct.
What does that what is the driver to, for example, for solar energy to go to 73% now?
I think there is several drivers of that. I mean, when you look at the different countries, there are different drivers for penetrating renewables in the renewable energy landscape. One key driver, obviously, the climate. The climate discussion, as you know, 2015 Paris Agreement that has set very clear goals for keeping the global warming below 2 degrees Celsius compared to the industrial years. The most viable way of addressing the climate change objectives is decarbonizing the economy, decarbonizing the energy sector. And within that objective, renewable energy plays a significant role. So recognizing the importance of renewables, countries have given more and more importance, taking into account also the decline in the costs. And there is a lot of innovation, a lot of investments into reducing costs on technologies, on solar panels, in turbines, but also enabling solutions. When we look at, for instance, the storage, what we have seen is a lot of innovation happening in storage, and we expect the innovation and cost decline is to continue both with the solar and wind technologies, as well as with batteries, for instance. Storage batteries, we are expecting in the next decade, in the next 8 to 10 years, to cost decline around 60%, which will be a game changer, especially penetrating renewables, intermittent renewables, solar and wind, into power systems. We are expecting around 55 to 60% decline in solar PV costs. Around 30 to 35 on also the wind, onshore and offshore wind. So the costs are still going down, and this is becoming more and more competitive. We're expecting also by 2020 the cost of solar and wind to stay at the lower end of the fossil fuel-based electricity costs. But I spoke a lot about electricity. Okay, things are first happening in the electricity sector, but more and more happening and innovation happening on how to penetrate renewables into end-use sectors. A lot of innovation happening with electric vehicles and electrification of the sectors. A lot of things are happening with heat pumps, for instance, that enables penetration of renewables into transport, into industrial sectors, and into buildings, in the residential sectors, for instance.
Wow. Let's talk about the battery, which is game-changing. And particular now, the cars are moving into the electric vehicle. Homes, maybe from solar roof, they can accumulate power, right? And there is, in Southeast Asia, I saw many solar roof panel. And that technology, as you said, keep changing. And when you think say, separate houses can be self-energy sufficient, and what is needed to be done, then we will pass the network grid. Every household makes own energy. What is in that perspective?
Absolutely. In fact, I mean, one clear impact of renewable energy deployment is democratizing the energy.
Okay.
Democratizing in the sense that it's not only the state or the utility who has a say in renewable energy production and consumption, but it is the citizens, it is the cities, it is the corporations. They have they start to have an important role in the whole energy business. As you clearly said, renewable energy, apart from its large-scale deployment through grids, etc., but it's also distributed through the distributed systems and decentralized systems, are bringing citizens, ordinary people, communities into the energy picture. Now the people produce, the citizens are not only consumers, but they are also producers. And a lot of innovation happening in that space. The digitalization, artificial intelligence, big data, as well as blockchain, such technologies now being implemented in the energy sector, which is making more and more easier for penetration of renewables at the individual people level. For instance, you gave the example of electric vehicles. What we see in electric vehicles, for instance, let's look at the cost of batteries. Lithium-ion batteries, which are used in the cars, they have seen 80% decline since 2010.
80%.
80%. 80.
Wow, lithium. Okay.
So we are expecting that by 2020, 2025, the electric vehicles to become competitive with fossil fuel run vehicles.
From which year?
2020 to 2025. So it is in the
That's
next
just
exactly.
very short.
This tomorrow.
Yes.
Basically. So I think the landscape is completely changing. Obviously, geopolitics around energy issues are changing. IRENA has recently created the so-called Global Commission for Geopolitics of Energy Transition. We brought together different well-known prominent figures across the globe, representing both renewable industry and fossil fuel industry, but also from environment sector, from foreign affairs, from energy sectors, etc. So it's representing a good mixture of different perspectives. And they came up with a report. They came up with a report to analyze, to have a first look into the implications of this energy transformation on geopolitics. And they came up with very interesting figures and interesting conclusions on how the transformation have an impact on energy producer countries versus energy importer countries, and who are the new leaders and who are the new actors.
You are in the country which is 100% dependent on a neighbor on food, which is fossil fuel, and trying to sell our own fossil fuel coal to the next neighbor. And it's really the crossroads of all problems are here in this small, few people, but large territory. How do you see all these implications being impact on Mongolia?
Yeah. And Mongolia is an important country in the sense that it's not only because it has such abundant energy resources, being coal on the one side, but being also solar and wind. There's a kind of vast resources of solar and wind, but also it is on the crossroads of possible larger scale electricity trade in the future, because country has resources, but it is also surrounded by other countries who need resources, who need electricity and energy. So within that picture, I think it's important that the country, the Mongolia, should develop its resources in a wise way. In a wise way in the sense that, of course, when we take decisions for developed resources, we make a decision for long term. It has implications and consequences in the long term. For instance, if you're constructing a coal power plant, it's not for the next 5-6 years. It is for the next 40-50 years. It's going to stay there. So on the other hand, we have to understand what the implications of it. We very well acknowledge and understand that the country wants to develop its own resources. And coal is very abundant and they want to make use of it. We very well understand. But also the governments should take informed decisions on what the consequences will be and where the world going in energy developments. Let's take, for instance, a very simple example of air pollution in Ulaanbaatar. We know that the city is suffering from air pollution for a long time, and it has even been a couple of years ago one of the a capital with one of the highest air pollution. And let's look at its implications on the health sector. What we see from this WHO and UNICEF data, it tells us that pneumonia is a second cause of death for children below 5 years in Mongolia, and where air pollution has a direct relevance and significant impact on as a cause of respiratory diseases. So when we start deploying renewables, it will have a direct impact on reduction of CO2 emissions and clearing the air. That's just one small aspect of renewable deployment. It is an impact on environment. It is an impact. I mean, it's not. We shouldn't only limit ourselves about the unit cost of electricity we produce through renewables versus different technologies. We have to see the bigger picture. What is the socioeconomic benefits as a ripple effect of renewable energy deployment? What is the effect on GDP growth? How is the effect on the balance of trade in the country? How is an impact on job creation? Renewable energy deployment has the much larger positive impact on job creation compared to other technologies. How is it impact on industrial development as well as service sector development? It's a large job creation and industrial development.
See the impact that should be considered. How you find your member country, Mongolia? I mean, this is non-governmental media, of course. How do you find? I mean, are they? I know they understand they are professionals, but want to judge them by their action, which is in life, with the reality, there are certain differences. For example, a few years ago they said, oh, we will buy solar energy with that level. Many companies came and made solar energy, and the government cannot buy because they haven't seen long term. And then now those companies, who is doing now, are doing cheaper than they say 10 years ago because this technology changes. How we can constantly adapt our policy to that change, yet having incentives for private sector to go renewable?
Absolutely. I think for the government, of course, I mean, we very much commend the work so far done by the government to promote renewable energy. But I mean, I think there is more to that. There is definitely room for being more ambitious. It is not only penetrating by certain gigawatts of renewable power into the grid, but we should have a more comprehensive approach and vision into how we can penetrate renewables into broader sectors. It's not only the energy matter. It's also about the industrial development. It's about the all developmental aspect of renewables. From that point of view, I think one important aspect is for the government to give clear signals, positive signals that they are committed for renewable energy development and sustainable energy development. I think that clear signals will definitely give confidence to private sector to move into the country to invest. Second is important aspect is proper planning. I think the long-term planning is in the essence of whatever we develop in the energy sector. How we see renewable energy penetration in the power sector and end-use sectors, and what are the most viable ways, viable means in terms of finance, in terms of benefits from social angles and environmental benefits and sustainability angles. And how we see it penetrating and doing a proper planning of that. Then, how we can create the right enabling frameworks and how we can create
How do you find Mongolians doing that?
I think Mongolia has done, but I think it is still, there are things to be done. We have done a few years ago the so-called renewable readiness assessment in the country.
In Mongolia.
In Mongolia.
And try to readiness
assessment. So basically to make an assessment of how country is ready to deploy renewables. So at that moment we have identified some of the challenges. Of course there is room for developing and further enhancing the policy and regulatory framework. It is end of the day how investor perceives the climate for investing in renewable energy in the country. So and how we can address those concerns raised by the private sector to invest more intensively into renewable energy industry.
It was 2015. 15. You said about the climate for investment of all this renewable energy, which is not that great based on those who made already, and the German companies complaining they are not buying. Finally, I understand they're buying. But what's happening with in other countries? They should have been facing the same problem with the technology evolution, revolution, the cost different, and you cannot commit to buy with fixed. How to solve the issue?
Absolutely. I think the issues and problems that Mongolia is facing are not new. And you don't need to start the discussion from the scratch. There are a lot of good examples and very incentivizing examples across the globe. Just look at the countries like, for instance, Morocco, like Chile. They have created such a framework, such an investment environment, such an enabling environment, and now they're kind of reaping the benefits of it. It's not only the benefits that they have now cheaper energy, cheaper electricity, and also the energy for consuming sectors, the end-use sectors, but they are also how the benefits are seen in different parts of the economy. In terms of job creation, in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, on industrial development, service sector developments, etc. I think it's what Mongolia needs to do and try to take those examples which are relevant to the Mongolian case. There are many of them available. And how countries address those challenges and those issues. There's a lot of discussion, just give you one example. There's a lot of discussion on that when we start developing solar and wind, there will be issues, it will mess with our power system, and the reliability will not be there anymore, and we cannot take renewables. This is a very old story. A lot of innovations happening in that space. You don't need to have or make an assessment for the reliability of the system in terms of the firm capacity or firm supply that one individual plant is providing. It's an entire system flexibility. So there are a lot of innovation happening, and we see countries operating with 100% renewables, 300 days of the. That's Costa Rica. It's a small country. Also
I was there. Beautiful country.
300 days in last year they have their power system operated only with renewables.
Wow.
There are several days in Germany, in different countries in Europe and other parts of the world that they have purely operated on renewables. There are several days.
In Mongolia, there is commitment under Paris Agreement that 20 by 2020, next year, 20% is to be renewable. 2030, 30%. How realistic in this country with the current situations?
I think there are additional efforts are needed. Of course, there might be some slip in achieving those targets on the set target dates. But I think it's, as I said, the most important thing is the commitment of the government and the taking action in order to translate this commitment into actual materialization of projects on the ground. I think within that perspective, maybe I just also refer to the ongoing discussions on NAPSI, Northeast Asia Supergrid, or Power System Interconnection Project, which is extremely important for Mongolia, in the sense that, for instance, the best way of stabilizing and ensuring the reliability of your power system is obviously having good interconnections with the neighbors, so that you can balance your system daily basis, seasonal basis, or hour of the day basis. much more easily because availability of power will be much easily accessible. But on the other hand, I think these regional interconnections will enable Mongolia to develop its renewable resources at scale. Because there are markets out there who are hungry for power, and fortunately Mongolia has abundance of it. And investing in renewables, solar and wind, will enable both meeting the domestic demand, complemented with the international trade that you can have cross-border trade with the balancing of your system. I mean, you will need less and less fossil fuels for that. But also gaining a lot of export revenues out of this trade opportunities.
How Mongolia is ready. We have been talking it for quite some time, and there are some also Japanese commitments, at least they say. So how far are we from that?
I think there are some studies, some pre-feasibility studies have been done already. I think it's at the final stage of it. That's one of the reasons that I'm here. The studies so far show that both technically and financially, these interconnections, both interconnections, as well as the development of renewable energy resources in Mongolia are feasible. So that's what studies say. But now it's time to take it from technical studies level to more at the decisions at the intergovernmental level. And Mongolia has an important role in that because Mongolia should use its convening power to bring together the governments at the highest level to ensure their commitment and full buy-in of the project. Of course, I mean, without the political commitment from all 5 or 6 governments, it's very difficult to move forward with the project, although the technicalities, although it shows that both financially and economic...
China, North Korea, South Korea, and Japan, right? At least these, Russia also.
And Russia.
Yeah. How far are our neighbors from that concept of interconnectivity?
I think there are already discussions taking place at the bilateral level. Mongolia having discussions with China. Korea is having discussions with also with China, also with Russia, with Japan, and they are also at the technical level doing some studies. And there are some memorandum of understanding. Some of them are at the utility level, some of them at the governmental level. So these bilateral trade discussions are taking place. But I don't think at this level, at the intergovernmental level, there's 5-6 country interconnections, this NAPSI context, that the discussions have taken place.
What is the reason is that is not taking place?
Of course, I mean, each countries, they have their own perspective with the projects. I mean, when we look at China, I mean, China is one of the leading countries in renewable energy deployment also. Last year, in 2017, 45% of solar PV deployment globally took place in China. And
how many percent?
45%.
Oh, okay.
And they're also the front runner in innovation with solar panels, with turbines, with electric vehicles, with storage batteries, etc. So China has an already well-developed renewable energy market. Russia, I think they're also investing in renewables. They have also a lot of hydro reliant on, and they have a certain perspective for the project. Of course, Korea has a different perspective as the main buyer together with Japan. They have their own perspective, and Japan has also internally having some restructuring right now and liberalizing the market, and they also focus on how to operate it and how to structure it. But it's important that this kind of regional projects can only fly if there is a win-win for everyone.
Last question on Mongolian energy sector situation in terms of government regulations. How rigid is this? How different are we? Where we can make improvement?
First of all, I mean, my knowledge of the situation dates back to our renewable readiness assessment time. So it's 2-3 years ago. So there might have been certain changes since then. So I'm not really fully updated on that. As I said, I think there is still room to further enhance the renewable energy enabling framework. For instance, there's still a lot of focus on feed-in tariffs. So currently the feed-in tariffs and how to revise it. But let's look at outside, what's happening. A lot of things are happening around auctions. So because difficulty with feed-in tariffs, because with the declining cost of renewables, it's very difficult to set the feed-in tariffs right. The best way of doing it is auctions, which is an important feature of auctions is that the market price discovery effect. So basically, you will see that at what price the investors are prepared to invest in renewables. So country can definitely consider that auctions. Of course, you need to look into whether auctions is the right mechanism. As IRENA, we are neutral to all mechanisms. If feed-in tariffs still make sense, it still makes sense. Right. But I mean, for instance, why not look into auctions? There are a lot of countries, and the lowest prices now they get are through auctions.
Well, that was very interesting dialogue. Of course, within 30 minutes, we cannot cover such interesting, exciting topics. But I see energy, I see the future, technology. I'm making now myself very optimistic, and I hope our energy authorities, other Mongolians related, will do the same. And I would like to thank you for very interesting conversation.
It's a pleasure for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. За, хүн төлөвчтэй өнөөдөр манай дефакто нэвтрүүлгийн зочноор энэ олон улсын сэргээгдэх эрчим хүчний байгууллага байдаг. За, энэний захирал ноён Гурбуз Гонул оролцлоо. Баярлалаа.